Date of the incident, April 26, 1986. Time, 1:23. Type, nuclear accident. Result, level 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale, meaning a major accident. But this is only a technical summary. The real question is, did this reactor truly explode by accident, or was it caused by years of accumulated design flaws and postponed safety decisions? Now let's go back to that night and examine together the chain of negligence that led to Chernobyl. Lost facts. In the mid-1960s, the Soviet Union launched a massive program to demonstrate its superiority to the world in the field of nuclear energy. This program was not only about energy production, it was a symbol of prestige, power, and weapons technology. At the heart of that program stood the RBMK reactor, which appeared on paper as an engineering marvel. What was the RBMK? It was a giant machine, 3 times larger than American designs, surrounded by graphite blocks, complex and deadly. The graphite blocks slowed down and controlled the chain nuclear reactions. But because they were flammable, they made fires in the event of a disaster nearly impossible to extinguish. The fuel rods inside were resistant to high temperatures, but when overheated, they reacted with water and released hydrogen. Operators were required to monitor this reactor, weighing thousands of tons. Yet its complex design made real-time control nearly impossible. For the power plant to be built near Pripyat, the Soviets decided to use their own RBMK design. RBMK stood for High Power Channel Type Reactor. At the time it was designed, it was one of the largest nuclear reactors in the world. Inside the reactor, uranium fuel was located in hundreds of separate channels. Cooling water passed around this fuel, and the entire system was surrounded by massive graphite blocks. The fuel rods were placed inside tubes made of a zirconium alloy. They could withstand high temperatures. On paper, it was a perfect choice. Ironically, however, this choice would play a role in amplifying the disaster, because when zirconium overheats, it reacts with water and releases hydrogen gas. This increased the risk of explosion. The graphite blocks forming the core of the reactor weighed approximately 1,700 tons and made the reactor's operation possible. But graphite was flammable. The use of such a large amount of graphite would make controlling a fire in a possible accident extremely difficult. Indeed, this is exactly what happened at Chernobyl. Each fuel channel of the RBMK could be controlled individually. This was an advantage, but it was also a major weakness. There were more than 1,600 channels in the reactor. At that time, it was very difficult to monitor the condition of each one instantly and reliably. Operators struggled to see the system as a whole. Another important feature was the ability to use low-enriched uranium. Here, a critical law of physics came into play, the positive void coefficient. Simply put, as water in the reactor turned into steam, the power could increase. Normally, in a reactor, as temperature rises, power should decrease. This is a safety mechanism. But in the RBMK, the opposite was true. Temperature increased, water evaporated. As steam increased, the reactor's power rose. And as power rose, even more heating occurred. The design was complex, the control system was slow, and some safety vulnerabilities were not taken seriously enough. To understand Chernobyl, one must accept this. It was not just a sudden disaster that happened in a single night. It was the result of design decisions made years earlier, ignored warnings, and a safety culture that was not questioned enough. And that night, all those weak links came together. The test was conducted on the night of April 25th to 26th, 1986, precisely at the most dangerous point. On the night of the test, the reactor's power was reduced to only 7% of its capacity. This was the reactor's most unstable and most dangerous operating range. To keep the system at this level, operators withdrew almost all control rods. The reactor was no longer safe. The control rods had become deadly. The emergency shutdown system was activated, and the graphite tips increased power instead of reducing it. Although this design flaw was known and had been warned about before, it had not been corrected. This critical information was not even communicated to the teams working at the plants. During the test, the emergency cooling system was disabled. Some of the safety systems were turned off. Safety limits were exceeded. All of this was done deliberately. With design flaws, hidden reports, and chain negligence, it was built step by step, and all of these mistakes exploded at at the same time. This channel tells the dark moments in human history. On this channel, we reveal the real events where control was lost. At 1:23, the steam to the turbine was cut off. The indicators began to show abnormalities. The operators eventually pressed AZ5, the emergency shutdown button, but the decision came too late, and the power level suddenly surged many times beyond the design limits. The zirconium cladding reacted with the steam, producing hydrogen. At 1:23:40, the first explosion occurred. Then came a second, even larger explosion. The 2,000-ton reactor lid was blown off. The core was exposed to the atmosphere. Graphite blocks caught fire, and radioactive materials rose kilometers into the sky. Firefighters did not know what they were facing. There were not enough radiation measurement devices. They attempted to fight the fire. Most of them died within seconds. Official figures acknowledged 31 deaths. Independent investigations suggested much higher numbers. People were given only 2 hours to evacuate their homes. 50,000 residents of the city would never return. They had to leave their homes and abandon their entire lives. The amusement park, one of Chernobyl's symbols, was set to open exactly 5 days after the nuclear accident. Children were excited to play there, but due to the disaster, they never got the chance. The city of Pripyat was evacuated only 36 hours later. This delay caused thousands of people to be unnecessarily exposed to radiation. The radiation cloud was carried north by the wind, and the world did not learn the truth until measurements in Sweden raised the alarm. The city was emptied and turned into a ghost town. Today, visitors to Chernobyl are first given a Geiger counter. This device is now mandatory to measure radiation levels. People under 18 are strictly prohibited from entering the area. Upon stepping into the zone, you must sign official documents acknowledging full responsibility. Even years later, high radiation still greets you when you enter the area. It is extremely hazardous to health. Safety measures are on an incredible scale. Soldiers are at every corner. Entrances and exits are tightly monitored, and there are strict rules to follow. You cannot touch anything, approach any animals, or place your belongings on the ground. When your Geiger counter goes off, stopping is forbidden. You cannot eat anything outdoors. Airborne radioactive particles can contaminate your food and seriously harm you. Normally, radiation levels between 0.10 and 0.30 are acceptable. However, on April 26, 1986, this value was 15,000 times higher than normal. Even a few seconds of exposure to this level was enough to kill a person. Yet the reactor staff and the firefighters who came to extinguish the fire risked their lives to prevent an even greater disaster. Immediately after the incident, cleanup and containment work began around the reactor. The roof still had radiation-emitting debris, which had to be thrown into the reactor. Robots were initially designed, but the radiation was so intense that within a few days, the robots broke down and became unusable. Therefore, the cleanup continued with human labor. Each worker had only 1 minute to throw radiation-emitting stones from the reactor roof. Within this short time, they were exposed to a lifetime's worth of radiation. Each worker had to throw 340-kilogram stones in 60 seconds. This dangerous operation continued uninterrupted for 10 days. After the roof was cleared, the reactor was surrounded by thousands of tons of concrete and metal. Even today, 40 years after the incident, the area remains dangerous, and traces of radiation have not disappeared. Chernobyl demonstrates both human courage and the destruction that can result when technology and negligence collide. This disaster did not stem from a single mistake. Known design flaws were not corrected. Previous warnings were ignored. Safety systems were deliberately disabled. After Chernobyl, the world changed. Modern nuclear reactors are built with entirely different design principles. Safety systems are now designed to operate passively. Control systems are much faster and more advanced. Computers monitor every parameter in real time and can automatically intervene at the slightest anomaly. Worst-case scenarios are tested repeatedly. International cooperation has increased. Design flaws are no longer hidden because now everyone knows nuclear energy cannot tolerate mistakes. When control is lost, the result is not just a technical failure. An entire generation is affected, and the world has to learn from it. If you want to watch these kinds of real, dark, and unforgettable stories, don't forget to subscribe. Here we will continue to tell the turning points of humanity. Take care of yourself until the next dark truth.